Hey everybody, it's Brian Asbury, and I just wanted to welcome you to today's episode. If you could, like today's episode, hit that subscribe button, and let's continue to grow the Developmentally Speaking brand.
Today my guest is former professional wrestler, trainer, Mr. Bill DeMott. Bill, how's it going?
I'm doing good, brother. How you doing, man?
I can't complain. Can't complain.
Good to see you, brother.
Good to see you. I want to thank you for coming on today.
Yeah.
So, this podcast is devoted to the developmental system, and after WCW closed, did you spend a little time in HWA?
We went. Actually, we were. There was a handful of us. We were on the road for WW. I guess we have to say WWE, but it's still WWF at the time, right? So there were so many guys now, ECW, WCW, WWE. There were so many guys. Okay, what can we do? They took a handful of guys that they weren't really doing anything with on TV. So it was myself, Stevie Richards, Raven, Crash Holly, Sean Stasiak, Tommy Dreamer. And we had gone down, and I think initially it was like go down there for a week, 2 weeks, work out with the younger cats, just be doing something. Right, you're getting paid, so let's do something. The cool thing for most of us was we dug that kind of stuff, especially me. So what happened as something we went to for like a week or 2 weeks turned into like a couple of months. So we spent a lot of time with Les Thatcher. Les, who is a dear friend of mine to this day, he opened the doors to HWA to us and kind of said, "Hey, you guys are up there. You have your finger on the pulse," and he kind of let us take over. So we were training with those cats every day. Funny side story of all the guys that were down there training while we went into the ring every day, and we were like really physical and getting the workouts in and turning them 2-a-days and stuff like that. Raven was there booking the territory. So it was awesome to the dynamic of the guys. But yeah, we spent a lot of time with HWA and Les, and I'll always kudos to Les because he really allowed us to come in and hopefully we helped the process. Yeah.
Yeah. They always consider HWA the lost developmental territory. Like it doesn't get talked about a lot.
Yeah, because what was it, hour down the road or whatever it was OVW at the time, and that's when they were still in that old factory, doing the tapings out of that, that small little.
That was a rough building.
It was a rough building, man. I've never seen people actually go through a wall getting the ropes, so it was pretty cool. But yeah, HWA is definitely an unsung part of the developmental system. Yeah.
So did the invasion happen during this time, or did you, when you went on the main roster, is that when you left HWA?
This was after the invasion.
Okay.
And while we were still doing things. So it was like TV, there was still the invasion kind of stuff going, but in betweens, we weren't going home. We were going to Cincinnati. Yeah. So it was after the invasion. I want to say it was after the invasion thing kind of broke up, and it was just different little things. So yeah, they were trying to figure out, hey, we got these guys. What do we do with them?
So when you were on the main roster and then DeepSouth came about,
yeah.
So what made you want to become a trainer?
Well, so before DeepSouth, I had done the Tough Enoughs. My background in all this wrestling stuff that I did was I was always in the ring. I was always, trying to learn something, do something with younger guys, trying to pick stuff up, and then trying to. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
Most pros would have their phones shut off by now, but it's early and I'm old, so I apologize for that. And hopefully I just made everybody laugh at me. Yeah, so I always enjoyed that part of it. So then I got Tough Enoughs, and so then we were going to, OVW because I built my relationship with Danny through HWA and doing that stuff with Les. And I think that's when they really saw that it's something that I, gravitated towards. So DeepSouth came about when they were trying to figure out what's the next territory, where's the next, inclination of it. So when DeepSouth came out, I was fortunate enough to get that look. But at that time, I was already done I say 98% of my in-ring career because I had broken my neck. I had the surgery.
Hmm.
I was doing the commentating and Tough Enoughs and going to OVW. And so they're like, well, oh, what else can we do? Okay, we're going to open Deep South. And so, but yeah, so Deep South came along after all that stuff.
Deep South wasn't open very long, was it? Or
No,
they shut it abruptly?
yeah, it seemed like it was. I feel like we were there for years
Hmm.
because if it, I think if everybody does their homework on Deep South, and by homework I don't mean reading the internet and all this other,
Hmm.
listen, it's going to happen. But the talent and the things that came out of Deep South were amazing.
Hmm.
And the short time that it was around really set the tone, I think, for FCW and how OVW started doing things differently. But yeah, Deep South wasn't there very long, and after I was gone from Deep South, I think it was a couple months later that in the middle of the night they moved it to Tampa. So it wasn't too long. It felt like a lifetime, but it wasn't really that long of a stint for Deep South.
Now, when FCW first opened, did you join right away, or was that a little bit after it was established?
No, yeah. So when I was done with Deep South, and so I'm going to clarify when I was done. When
Hmm.
John Laurinaitis called me and told me that my services were no longer needed because talent was upset they were working too hard. They thought they'd go in a different direction. They actually had Dr. Tom, who I'm a big fan of, love,
Hmm.
respect, everything for Dr. Tom. Him and I have crossed paths so many times in our careers, it's not even funny. But much love to Dr. Tom. But Dr. Tom was already on the payroll for a couple of months before I was gone.
Hmm.
So when he took over Deep South, I think it was, already an understanding that it wasn't going to be there for long. They're going to Tampa. At that time, I was done with wrestling. I'd
Hmm.
done a couple of independent things, and still did a seminar, but I was working for FedEx, and
Hmm.
I'd worked for FedEx for 3 years. So somewhere between that 2007 to 2011, I was kind of out of wrestling altogether. And then
So,
I got my first look at FCW. Um, Triple H brought me in after the Tough Enough series on USA with Stone Cold.
hmm.
So he called me. We met in Nashville. They put the opportunity for me to become a producer, come back, be a producer, and work with some of the younger cats and get acclimated there. And then while I was doing that, back to the old thing. Okay, when you're not at TV, we'd like to go to FCW and check it out.
Hmm.
So I'd go from TV Monday, Tuesday to Tampa Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. But initially, I was at just to, and Triple H sent me there. Take a look. Hey, see what you think. How do you like the place? Because I'd never been there.
Hmm.
And so I think 2011 was the first time I was in FCW in Tampa. Yeah.
Steve Kern, I just interviewed him, and he spoke highly of you and said that he
He's
liked having you around. And
Listen, man. There's maybe a handful of great people on this earth. I'm
hmm.
not talking about wrestling. I'm talking about just great people. I call Steve the captain. So when the captain calls, I always answer. I always go to him. He's been not like I had the pleasure of Steve being one of my producers when I was a talent,
Hmm.
coaching next to Steve when he'd come into Deep South or wherever we'd go, and Steve would be dropping knowledge. I was always by the ring and listening to him. I got to know him as a person. Then when I joined FCW, Steve just opened his arms, said, "Billy, this is what we've been doing.
Hmm.
Well, I'm in whatever we need to do." I love Steve Kern. I think everybody in the world should do a special on Steve Kern in his life. I'm delayed in getting his book. Uh, I apologize, Captain, for that, but I absolutely think Steve Kern is one of the best human beings I've ever met.
I would agree. He said that he wanted to get off the road when they offered him FCW, and then
Yeah,
he was like, "Well, damn, I was on the road in Florida every night, but I was
yeah,
in my bed."
yeah. You were there, right? That was the key. They told you, no, we're promised you'll be home every night, but you're still going to be running, the whole state. And Steve was so hands on. That was
Mhm.
his, and rightfully so was his baby. He drove the ring truck. He did all these things that
Mhm.
you hear that as you become a legend in the business you shouldn't do. Steve was always hands on. He was there for it. He spent a ridiculous amount of time with talent, more so as people and helping them,
Mhm.
outside the ring. I mean, like all praise, like let's listen, everybody was all praise to Steve Keirn. If you don't know who he is, please go follow what he does and what's the thing, Google him
Yeah.
and learn because he's not only was he a great talent and a great coach, he's just a super human being.
So how was your time overall in FCW?
It depends on who you ask. So you're asking me. I
Hmm.
thought it was outstanding.
Hmm.
I thought FCW, which didn't, I don't know the exact timeline, but FCW just molded into NXT very
Hmm.
quickly with Triple H's vision. But the concept of walking into that warehouse uh, and seeing three rings, two and one, and the one main show, and seeing how they did TV and how they trained and everything, it was
Hmm.
really eye opening to the changes in the developmental system. But just absolutely first class. Steve did absolutely the best job. That's when the trainers, they had the trainer, they had a full time trainer, they had all these things available. And then, okay, you have Steve Keirn,
Hmm.
you have Dr. Tom, you have Ricky Steamboat, and you have Dusty Rhodes. Come on, dude. Come on, dude. I didn't care. It didn't matter if we were making pencils every day. The fact that you and then you had Norman Smiley. It's come on, man. I walked into the best possible scenario that someone could say, hand you the keys and go, okay, do something with this. And
Hmm.
it was just amazing, man. I I thought all the talent was great. I thought the way it was run was great, and the opportunities that were given to me and everyone else to further it along were just outstanding. So I was a big fan of FCW and what it turned into.
So when did you guys know that FCW was coming to a close and NXT was the future?
I don't know when everyone else knew. I knew
Hmm.
pretty quickly, because like I said, I would still go on the road as a producer and do those things, and then I'd start getting involved in the training and working along with Dr. Tom and so we were getting ready for instead of shooting, we already knew I knew the Full Sail deal was in place,
Hmm.
that we were going to start doing it there. So as all the announcements were made, I was already well aware of them, and we were going to that format of how things were done. So when the initial word came down from Hunter, when he addressed everybody and let everybody know what was going on, I think change is what scares people.
Hmm.
What's it going to be? But FCW just morphed into NXT. I don't think NXT would have been there without FCW. But
Hmm.
I knew pretty quickly the vision and what we were going to, and I think that's what made people nervous because they know when something changes, things are going to change, right?
Yeah.
And so there's a comfort zone in developmental after a while.
Hmm.
I think talents develop a comfort zone. They develop good relationships with their coaches, and then when there's change comes, it's eggshells and excuse my language, that oh shit moments of what's going to
Hmm.
happen now. But I think if you look at the totality of what it is, it's probably the most successful thing that's happened in wrestling
Hmm.
in a long time.
Oh yeah, and like it's more eyes on the product, so more trainers, more this, more space, more.
Yeah.
So maybe they felt like they were gonna get lost in that shuffle because now it's.
Well, everybody who saw the when Hunter and when people like when I first took the coaches to the building,
Hmm.
the new where the performance center was going to be before it was all built out, they we're all looking at each other like, do you believe that we're part of this business? Like, it's like hearing that cars are going to be floating. I'll
Hmm.
never be alive for it, but you know what's going to happen. Well, when
Hmm.
that performance center, I'll never forget. I know I'm going off track, but when Triple H took me for the first time to this building, he was thinking about, there were racks from the floor to the ceiling. It was a big storage warehouse. There was nothing resembling what the performance center. And he was explaining, what do you think if we do 5 rings? And him and I literally took our suit jackets off and ties off, and we were beefing because it was hot in there. There was no air. It was an empty, and we were walking it off with our feet, heel to toe. Okay, there's so many feet this way. Oh, what if we do this? And it went from 3 rings to 4 rings to 7 rings to if we make this 5,000 square foot training, powerlifting and all these other things. So the amazing part, then you bring your coaches in and go, this is going to be home. They're going, holy crap. This is going to be so difficult. And as we watched it morph and turn into it, the excitement was like, we get to do this.
Mhm.
And now we're here and look at this thing, and we're on the ground floor of it. So I think, and there goes the lack of professionalism again.
You're
Jeez,
fine.
I'm sorry. Yeah, when I do the foundation stuff, my phone goes off all the time. But back to I think a lot of people were really nervous. The talent was more excited than I thought they would be because we moved everything with the
Mhm.
talent. We got U-Hauls. We brought, we had 3 rings. We took the rings apart. We literally cleaned out FCW, drove everything, and set it up. And I think part of the setting up process is what made them really realize what they were going to be living in and things like that. And as the performance center changed and grew and adapted, it became this amazing deal.
What was the major differences between FCW and NXT? Like, did you guys travel as much, or was it
Um,
primarily Full Sail?
Jesus Christmas. I'm so sorry. I don't even know how to
You're
shut
fine.
this off, so I apologize.
You're fine.
The difference was FCW was doing a lot of live events, right?
Mhm.
So that didn't change. The difference was now the training and the preparation was going to change because you have a gym.
Mhm.
I mean, you have a gym modeled after the New York Giants football team. That's how impressive this. And now it's even more than what it was. But when it started, it was all state of the art things. So you had opportunities to go from and what we implemented was there was new talent. There's talent that had been there, and there's talent that we needed TV ready.
Mhm.
TV ready meaning not just for Full Sail to go up to the main roster because it was a developmental system,
Mhm.
but it was a developmental system that was touring the state, reaching national news. So these guys were always on. These guys and girls were always on. There was always a TV camera. There was always, and then you're working with Dusty in a bigger promo class. He got to split it up. You got to split the days up into where you weren't just clamoring 50 people in a room and trying to get to 10 of them in a day.
Mhm.
Everybody had that attention now, and I think it was a lot of learning to everyone. And I think what got lost was, hey, you're going home every day.
Mhm.
You're being treated like a main roster talent now. You're getting paid to come into this Shangri-La. You're being trained for longevity. You have a promo room. You have promo classes. You have tape rooms now where they used to have to sit in one little office and watch tape individually. You're taking a group of 12, watching the live event, breaking it down with particular coaches.
Mhm.
And everybody got now to spend time with different coaches and things like that. So I think the change was amazing. And at the same time, it wasn't what the grizzled veterans of developmental were used to
Mhm.
because now their schedule changed. It used to be you were there for 3 hours, the other 21 hours a day were yours.
Mhm.
Well, now there was expectations of being there for, hey, your day may start at 8 and it's not going to end until 4. So I think that was a lot of the unhappiness of
Yes.
being paid 45, 55, 65K a year and going home was now you were expected to actually be in the building and working on your craft.
That was going to be my next question is with this building and Full Sail and these expectations, was it a hard transition for some talents to be like, you have to treat this like it is almost a main roster? It is.
Yeah, because it's like anything else in wrestling, right? If I do my time,
Mhm.
why do I have to do this?
Mhm.
I already know how to lift weights. I'm jacked, but you're being trained to do it differently for longevity. That was the thing I think with NXT and Hunter's vision was the longevity of these talent because before then, a developmental talent had a shelf life of like 2-3 years.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, there were guys and girls in the system that had been there 6 years and no one knew their name.
Mhm.
When I got to FCW, there was 4 people on their roster, on their attendance list that no one had seen in a year and a half. And then when you call them, what are you doing? Well, nothing. Just well, where are you?
Mhm.
Like, why are you not here? And that was the things that changed. But I think them adapting to the fact that they had all the state of the art things. They had coaches that were coming in. We were bringing in guest coaches from everywhere across the world. We're bringing Olympic coaches. People wanted to get involved in what we were doing,
Mhm.
and instead of seeing it as an opportunity, they saw it as punishment. Why? why do I have to go through this again? Why do I have to train for why do I have to do prom? I already trained. Wait a minute, we're paying you
Mm-hmm.
to be trained by a specific strength and conditioning coach. This is part of your job. And I think a lot of people stopped looking at it as a wrestling opportunity and thought it was a job. So, here's where I get my reputation. I'd ask him, if would you come here if you weren't getting paid? And 90% of them were like, no.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then there's a problem,
Yeah.
right? There's a problem with it. And I think it's all perception. And every talent looked at it differently. And there began a comfort zone. And when you give people the keys to the yellow brick road, they don't feel like they should have to travel on the gravel road anymore, or they should have to travel or ride somewhere for 2.5 hours. And you had talent asking for gas money because they had to drive to Jacksonville. And so the dynamic changed as things got better.
Mm-hmm.
More obstacles, were put in place.
You mentioned longevity. I'm from the OVW area, so I got to see a lot of talent before they're on the main roster.
Yeah,
And that 2002 to 2005, like they gave you like 2 weeks. If you didn't get over, released. Let's bring
yeah,
somebody else up.
yeah.
Like they'd never try. It just seemed like at that time they just let's throw shit against the wall, see what sticks. If it doesn't work week one, we're moving on to talent two. Like, and with NXT and FCW, it felt like they, like you said, longevity. They were gonna.
It was the long game. It wasn't
Mhm.
just, and I think that was understood by the time you were, and I say allowed because you were hired to be part of a developmental system.
Mhm.
So instead of, and this is where it got muddy, because you had some independent guys making a great living, made a name for themselves, came into NXT or came into the performance center, and they want to know, why do I have to do this again? And my answer was, if you're happy where you are and you're making money, you're making your schedule, and you're loving life and you're loving wrestling, this is not the place for you. I was very honest. But if you want to be here and get the opportunity to be who you can be and who you want to be, this is the way it's done. And that was always the thing, because here comes Triple H, who opens up this rainbow and gives you all state of the art. But the side note is, you have to come to work every day.
Mhm.
You have to, and that was the longevity. Let's see who's putting in the time and effort. It wasn't that you're not good enough to go now. Where's the opportunity to go now, and what are you doing in the process? So there was a really lot of conversations one on
Mhm.
one, trying to convince talent that they're doing the right thing, and all these things, and not keep looking at it as a punishment, because the answer always was, if you can go make $65,000 a year somewhere else, please do it, or go have fun. And I've said it to a
Mhm.
lot of men and women that I respected. Like, if this isn't for you, I get it. Go have fun in what you're doing, because otherwise, it's like coming to make the donuts. And I
Mhm.
use that term all the time. Oh, here they come. Oh, they're coming to make the okay. Hey, good morning. The fucking morning.
Mm.
Yeah, what do I got to do now? How long I got to be here? You don't have to be here.
Mhm.
But geez, you have a man who's building you a future and a place to come that's state of the art. Act like you want to be here. And that was the hard part. And I think that's human nature, right? The more you get, the more you expect, but the less you expect to have to do to get it, because now it's put in front of you. So it was a challenge. It really was a challenge every day.
They just felt like that spark wasn't there. They forgot why they were there, or why they wanted to
Yeah,
be a WWE superstar. Or
yeah, yeah. It kind of wears off, right? And
Mhm.
now you're on Full Sail. So now NXT's on TV at certain points. Well, I'm on TV. I'm over. I'm the number one guy in this, but it's still a developmental system. You're over within this group. You have to. And as we see, fast forward to it, a lot of people that were over and
Mhm.
doing very well in NXT, when they went to the main roster, everything was stripped away,
Mhm.
because they didn't believe in that, or they didn't like the direction. So it was always the question: are we going too fast? Are we doing? We know what they're doing here. Can they do it there on a bigger level, on a bigger schedule, with less time being home? We were trying to get them ready for the main roster, top to bottom, nuts and bolts, life in and out of the ring in the car.
Mhm.
So I think a lot of people got complacent, and it's not a knock, it's just human nature, and a lot
Hmm.
of people expected more, and when they had the opportunity they didn't or couldn't answer the bell.
They wanted that Roman Reigns schedule 24/7.
Jesus. But there's a guy, you saw Joe when I walked in, didn't even know who he was, didn't
Hmm.
didn't didn't know he was part of the Samoans
Hmm.
who I've worked with my whole career. Didn't know he's one of the sons and all, and but you knew when you walked in the room, geez, Lou,
Hmm.
this, I don't know if he's any good, but he looks the part. And not only did he look the part, and not one time, and I'll say this, not because he's who he is now, because of who he was then, never heard one time him come in and publicly bitch
Hmm.
about his schedule. He stayed the course. There was so many guys and girls that deserve their roses and flowers because they stayed the course.
Hmm.
And while it was frustrating, yes, but they understood. And those guys and girls, you see them every week now, and you see them doing their thing. So
Hmm.
the system works. It's just that
Yeah.
we're constantly replacing cogs and gears and personnel. So
Yeah. What are some of your favorite memories from your time in developmental and NXT? What you're most proud of?
I'm proud of. I've never said I'm responsible for that.
Hmm.
I've always been proud of having something, some small part in that journey. I don't think a lot of talent understand who is part of their journey. They just get the phone call from one person, and that's the person they thank, and that's the person they. But I'm proud of the way we turned the system around, how training is done, how tryout camps are done now worldwide.
Hmm.
Um, I never use my name in anything, but that's the Build 'em Out system.
Hmm.
I was given an opportunity to devise and re kind of coordinate things, and we took things that we did many years ago, implemented them, and so the training system changed. I'm proud of having the first female coach ever in the history of pro wrestling when we brought in Sarah.
Hmm.
I'm just proud of changing things up into the developmental system because everybody was in the same room for 3 hours. Some talent got work, some didn't. Some worked on things, some got attention. We made sure we had enough coaches, like at school, right?
Hmm.
The student to teacher ratio. We wanted to make sure. And then I was proud of who I brought in and who I suggested, and how the tryout camp started running and how the whole process. And I'm just honored to be able to sit with Paul and discuss that and watch it grow. I'm just proud of the developmental system as a whole. So when I watch it now and you hear the stories and even see video of the tryouts, they post how they went to Dubai and all these. I'm proud of it because that's my system at work, and
Hmm.
I know they've made it better. But the soup and nuts of it, the ground floor stuff, is still um, build them out territory. So I'm very proud of what it turned into, and I'm happy for what it turned into.
As you should be. You did a lot for a lot of
Thank you.
people.
Thanks. Yeah.
What is
I'm
built?
of course, I'm as I know, and I've pissed a few people off along the way, but as long as it goes back, as long as you're doing what you're doing and you're
Hmm.
happy with it, good. And I'm yeah, I feel good about the whole thing.
Good. What's Bill DeMott up to today?
Well, you see my background. I started the podcast again.
Hmm.
Work with my buddy Jeff Townsend for the Build 'em On experience. We have the website up, and we started the podcast where I get to my journey changed in 2015. Um, my middle daughter was killed in a car crash by a multiple DUI offender. As I was transforming into my new journey in life after leaving WWE, I was touring and doing this kind of TV thing, and it was called the Build 'em On Experience. I was meeting coaches and people who were helping others, and
Hmm.
we were on the table with the Discovery Channel and things like that. So things were going in a great direction. My daughter was taken from us, um, and I stopped everything else. We made the foundation in Carrie's name. So for 7.5 years now, I I haven't worked. I run the Carrie and DeMott Foundation. Everyone's 100% volunteers. Um, and I spend my time, believe it or not, traveling the country now and speaking to students and law enforcement. And I always give the credit back to professional wrestling. Because if I didn't do what I had done for 30 years, I don't think I'd be able to stand in front of people.
Hmm.
And I use that wrestling mentality of not noticing who's in the room. And I do my best to try to motivate. And like I said, once you're a coach, you're a coach. And if you're a dad, not only you a dad, you're a coach because we're trying to help our kids, do better than we're doing. So I knew what Carrie's mission and message is,
Hmm.
and that's what I do. And I'm not a big fan of, if you can imagine, social media and things like that, because I've taken my fair shots of blunt force trauma over the years. The last 2 years of my leading the developmental system and being the head of that system, I had a big bullseye on me. But I always made sure to stay out of social media because it can make or break you.
Hmm.
But I found myself now in front of TVs and social media news all the time, and I just focus on the purpose of it. But I run the Carrie Ann DeMott Foundation. We're a 501c3 nonprofit. It started here in Central Florida, and now we travel the nation. And um, and it's so we don't just try to educate people about drunk, impaired, and distracted driving. We try to talk to people, especially the younger people, about decisions we make.
Hmm.
We talk in elementary school, middle school, high school, colleges, sports teams. And if you follow me on social media, you'll see a great deal of me calling people out
Hmm.
for the decisions they're making as it pertains to DUIs and things that are taking lives. And we should know better,
Hmm.
right? So as we talk to kids and with my background, so we talk about social media, texting, this great thing called the smartphone that keeps going off while I'm talking to you. And so just running the foundation for the past 7.5 years, trying to continue to inspire my other daughter, Casey, and my son, Billy, and remind them of why we do what we do,
Hmm.
and I've met some amazing families and people along the way. And I want to say this: I always try to go back to pro wrestling. When my daughter was taken from me, one of the first calls I got was from Vince McMahon. The wrestling community came to my side with support. So for all the I think negative and bad things people hear, it truly is a different group of people.
Hmm.
That when real is important, that's what's dealt with, because it's easy to go to the negative things. But so that's what I've been doing. That's what I do all the time. I'm very fortunate enough to still get the opportunity to do some seminars throughout the year. I have one coming up in June. I'm going to Georgia,
Hmm.
and I think this is the first time I'm saying it. I am honored to be. I'm getting inducted into the Dan Gable Luthez Hall of Fame in
Congratulations.
July, and I think that's. I still can't wrap my head around it. Gerald Briscoe, who's a dear friend of mine,
Hmm.
goes along the same line as Steve Kearney. He was my producer. He was my coach. Then we worked alongside each other. Then in developmental, we became tighter. And he's still my friend and my coach till this day. Joe Briscoe called me and told me the news. And I thought, what a weird journey, man.
Hmm.
What a weird journey, how everything ties back to how this all started in 1988, right? So I may have this reputation of this, that, or the other thing, but truly to be honored by the people that you respect and the business that really opened the doors to my life and things like that. Like, it truly, everything we do is developmental, dude.
Hmm.
Everything we're learning all the time.
Yep.
But I've taken all the lessons from wrestling, and in my house, the number one rules my kids, wrestling rules apply here. Because wrestling, we all know, and Mick said it, wrestling's real
Hmm.
and life is fake. So wrestling rules have always applied in my house. But I hats off to everything I've learned and the people that have taught me along the way, that have helped me, unfortunately, make this foundation successful. You know.
Where can they find more information on the foundation?
Well, we have on Twitter, the foundation is KADF Foundation One. On Instagram, it's the Carrie Ann DeMott Foundation. On Facebook, it's the Carrie Ann DeMott Foundation. But the best way to find out what we're doing is go to www.thecarrieanndemottfoundation.com. That's our website. It tells you everything we're doing, everybody we're working with and for, and what the foundation has done in the 6.5 years of its official existence. And then it gives everybody an opportunity to get us into their area and doing the things that we do. So like I said, we over 100,000 students as we started 2023. We're way over that now. And then we started a victim service program where my daughter and I became certified victims advocates because we work with families who've been affected by this, and we walk with them through the whole journey from the initial crash to the judicial process to the trying to navigate that journey of what life looks like now after a loved one has been taken. So the outpouring opportunities have been amazing. I still think it stinks. I'd rather be doing anything else.
Hmm.
But we're changing the world. Carrie Ann's changing the world, and so please and if you don't follow any of that stuff, people can follow me on social media because I'm always making sure to tag the foundation
Hmm.
and what we're doing, because pretty much 99% of everything I do has to deal with the foundation. Even in wrestling, I get to share a little bit and remind them of how precious time really is, and take advantage of the opportunities because it always leads to something else.
Hmm.
And so, as a coach, the greatest thing in the world is to hear from someone who's either left the developmental system or had a short run or a long run on the main roster or done it anywhere for any other company, but then always touching base and saying, "Hey, coach, what's up? This is what I'm doing." Like when their first kid's born, when they get a new opportunity, when some become cops, when some become a successful businessmen and businesswomen, and getting to still hear those opportunities and sharing messages with the Garcia sisters and Kofi Kingston, and you go up and down the line. and
Hmm.
and that's the thing as a coach. Like, you didn't dig me as a coach, but you understood where I was coming from
Hmm.
as a person. And that's what I'm most proud of, is my relationships. And people are always going to think and what they want, what they read or what they hear.
Hmm.
But for the people that are in the trenches and understand really what's going on, that's been the best part of wrestling for me, and that's what keeps me a fan
Hmm.
and still involved, because I always go by, you never know, it's always that time frame. There's going to be another Tough Enough, and if
Yeah.
Steve Austin's got another 6 months he wants to spend with me, I'm ready to go.
Well, I just want to thank you for everything that you've done for professional
Thank you,
wrestling and
man.
what you
Thank
continue to do. And
you.
thank you for coming on and speaking with me today. I greatly
Man,
appreciate it.
it's a pleasure. You got a great show here. I am a fan. I watch it. So I appreciate the people you have on and what you talk about. And again, just thank you. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity, and I hope to talk to you again.
Thank you again, sir.
Thanks, brother.
See ya.